Morning, everyone. Welcome to the second annual RECA Residential Property Manager Industry Council Spring Engagement Session. This is your opportunity to hear from the standard setting governing body for your industry sectors and to ask them questions and let them know what you're seeing out there on the ground day to day. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Brian Dewey. I'm the Communications and Connections Manager here at RECA, and I will be the moderator for this engagement session. Before I pass things off to the Industry Council Chair, I just wanted to briefly cover how the session will unfold. First, the Chair will go through a brief presentation outlining the Industry Council's activities and priorities going forward, followed by an open question and answer session. If you have a question for the Industry Council, you can ask at any time using the Q&A window. You'll see the button to open the window at the bottom menu of your Zoom screen. If you have Zoom in full screen mode, you may have to move your cursor to the top of the screen to make the menu pop down. When the presentation has concluded, I will ask the Industry Council Chair your questions. Please note, this is a curated Q&A session, so if you have a question that falls under the jurisdiction of another Industry Council or the board, please save that question for the next online engagement session for that Industry Council. Or send your question to the email address for that body, all of which can be found on the RECA website. And please also note that I may not read out your question word for word. And if there is more than one question relating to a particular topic, I'll ask a general question about that topic to cover multiple questions. And please note that if your question contains unprofessional language or contains defamatory language or misinformation, please note that I will not read that question. And now with that housekeeping out of the way, I will pass things off to Don Newell, who is the Chair of the Residential Property Manager Industry Council. Welcome, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks to everybody for attending today's session. We really appreciate it. We'd originally intended that this session could be a hybrid session where we would have in-person and virtual as we are now, but the vast majority of you decided that virtual was the way to go, and I guess that's just the way things have evolved over the last couple of years with COVID, but thank you for attending. As Brian said, we've got a few slides to go through just to tell you a little bit about what's been going on with our Industry Council, and we'll go through those. But the key here is that we want to hear from you and get any questions or comments, and we've got a number of topics that we're going to raise as we go through the slides that we'd like to get your feedback and input on. I'd like to start by also saying that we've got our entire Industry Council in attendance today, and so I'm going to ask each of them just to briefly introduce themselves, and I'll start maybe by asking Don Brown, who's our Vice Chair, to kick it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so my name is Don Brown. I'm serving currently as the Vice Chair on the Industry Council, and I also had the pleasure to serve on the CMAC Advisory Committee on the initial education and rolling out the licensing. It's been a tremendous experience and been a lot of big changes. But I'd also like to echo Chairman Newell's thanks for everybody to show up. We know everybody's busy and it takes time to attend these, but we do appreciate your time. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Don. And I'm a public member, and so I'm going to ask our other public member, Cyril, to introduce himself.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. As Chair Newell mentioned, my name is Cyril Pratt. I'm the second public member on the Industry Council. Very happy to be here, and thanks to everybody as well for making the time this morning, as Don Brown mentioned, to attend, especially on a Friday. We appreciate that. I'm really enjoying my time as an Industry Council member, learning lots and working collaboratively with the team and at RECA. So looking forward to the feedback we hear this morning and working with you all going forward. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Cyril. Keith.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Keith McMullen, and I also sat on the Education Committee, and it's been a busy time getting condominium up and running, and we have other agenda items, and we want to listen to you so that we move forward and as quick as possible. Thank you.
And Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie Platt. I am one of the elected members of the Industry Council, and I'm also very honored for the Industry Council to have appointed me to the Board of Directors, which I serve on as well. And really looking forward to the feedback we get today from our industry members. So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. So just a brief look at our agenda for the day. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the details in these slides. I really want to use them as a guide to just encourage you to think about the things that we're working on and provide your thoughts and comments. So we'll give you a little bit of what we're up to in terms of condominium management education. I know that's a hot button issue for a lot of folks on this call. We'll talk about what's going on with other education divestment more broadly with RECA and with our council, as well as some considerations we're giving to what happens with relicensing when that rolls around. The strategic planning process is underway, and the board is very actively involved in that, so we'll give you some thoughts there as well. And then some of the things that we are working on when we've identified as upcoming priorities, but again, invite your input to see if there's anything else that we should be considering. And of course, questions. We really welcome your questions, your comments, and concerns. So things to keep in mind, as we've all said, we want to hear from you. This is an interactive process. We are a regulatory body and we do have a public protection mandate. So everything that we do is with the protection of the consumer in mind. But having said that, we also know that that all of you are in business and we need to make sure that you are able to conduct your business in an appropriate way and a professional way. And so that's the balancing act that we've always got when we're trying to deal with things like, and as we'll talk about in a few minutes, the rules review and some of the things that we've put in place with respect to education already. So the one thing that we do hear and struggle with a little bit is some terminology sometimes gets in the way because property managers, at least a board of a condo corporation, could refer to a condo manager as a property manager, whereas we distinguish because we do have both property management and condominium management as part of our mandate from a residential perspective. So property managers are those that deal with people who are in the leasing business, whereas condominium managers are those who deal directly with condo boards. At least that's the way we view the terminology. On condo education, we know that there is a timeline that is fast approaching and that we have to get through the course process or the challenge process by November 30th because relicensing happens at that point. And we want to make sure that everybody that's got a conditional license now is in a position by then to be able to convert that to a full regular license. We've been working with a number of course providers, and there are now a number of courses available. ACMEC has produced all three courses, the fundamentals, practice, and the brokers courses. Haskayne School of Business at U of C has two of the courses approved, fundamentals and the practice. And the UBC Sauder School of Business has the fundamentals course approved. So the courses are out there. There are a number of people who have actually challenged the exams and passed. So that's encouraging. And again, I would stress that we need to make sure that everybody that hasn't started something yet should get into that process immediately. And if you wish to challenge the exams, that is certainly something that should also be done sooner rather than later, so that if there is any issue with getting through the process, then there's still a little bit of time to move into the next step, which we would be potentially to have to work your way through one of the courses to retake the exams. There's been some concern with, which we're already aware of, with respect to both pass rates as well as some of the questions on the exams. We know that this is an iterative process, particularly for condo, because this has never been done before. And at the same time, we need to make sure that as I mentioned, the public interest is maintained in terms of what RECA's role is in the protection of the public. So the exams are set at a level which was intended to ensure that the basic knowledge that was required is tested. And so we work with the course providers as we find where those questions are perhaps providing some challenge to those that are taking it, to see if the course is actually covering those subjects appropriately. And so again, as I said, it's a bit of an iterative process. So we are very closely aligned with the providers. They are working with RECA and RECA staff to make sure that we are being responsive to any feedback that we get. But at the same time, we want to make sure we continue to listen and that we continue to learn from the actual process of people going through the courses and taking the exams. Education divestment, as you probably know, RECA as a whole, through all of our industry councils, including our own, has got to pass on the responsibility for education to third-party providers. We have, RECA has set a timeline for doing that of June 1st of this year. And so we've now got the property manager side of the house, in terms of our industry council anyway, to ensure that we've got a provider set out there that can produce the courses that we need for property managers. And so there are some course providers now that have been approved for that, and that the courses, at least one of them, is expected to be available by June 1st. So we think we're on the right track in terms of getting that process underway as well. And then we've got relicensing, which we know we will have to do at some point, but we're not thinking that that's going to happen until probably the 2022-23 licensing year. So there will be more to hear on that front as the industry council and I guess all of the industry councils work our way through what needs to be done in terms of relicensing. So we'll keep you apprised as we go through that process. Strategic planning, I mentioned that we had have a process underway at the board level where the strategic direction of RECA as a whole is being reviewed. Our industry council was formally and appropriately consulted at the stage when the initial priorities were being set. And there was a round of stakeholder engagement asking for input as to where RECA's priorities should be set. And there is a survey actually online out at the RECA website that if you wish to provide some feedback, and you are certainly encouraged to do so, you can just visit the link and you can then provide your input and your comments on where the board should consider its future directions for probably the next 3 years. There will be some more consultation. I guess once we have received all the feedback there is from both government as well as stakeholders. And so I think we'll just reiterate that if you wish to provide some feedback, now would be the time to do so. And the next slide shows what these preliminary or proposed strategic priorities are. And they are with columns: regulatory excellence, trust and confidence, and organizational resilience. And so Carrie, as our board representative, maybe I can just ask you just to speak for a minute or two on where the board is at with respect to considering these priorities and what you might like to hear from stakeholders next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the board has been working quite diligently on this over the last little while. We had a full day strategic planning session in March, which is where we kind of came down to these three key strategic priorities, and within them the kind of sub priorities, I guess you would call them. Really, we're really looking for feedback from industry members and the industry associations to help us determine and fine tune these strategic priorities. This will guide us for the next 3 years in how we move forward with everything from education, compliance, rules review, and all of those key elements that will help us ensure that we're meeting our regulatory requirements of protecting the public, and that we have very strong industry sectors with people who are executing their jobs to a very, very high level. I think that really sums it up, but I just can't encourage industry members enough to connect on that link and put your feedback in so that we have lots of feedback to be able to work through these strategic priorities and make sure that we get them as close to right as we possibly can.
Right, thanks, Carrie. And Carrie, you mentioned the comprehensive rules review. So just for everybody's information, it's been a while since the rules as a whole were reviewed. And so now is a good time to do so from the perspective that we want to look at the rules to see if there's any that should be adjusted, should be amended, maybe some deleted. If there's red tape involved in some of them that, or from your perspective, that there's red tape that could be reduced, clearly that's an objective that we would be supportive of. So to the extent that there are specific suggestions or improvements that you would provide with respect to rules, then by all means do so. And that includes the condo rules, because while we are relatively new with those, I think, again, we're still in an iterative process of understanding what the best rules are, keeping in mind that as RECA, we will still always have, as Carrie said, that public protection mandate. On the licensing framework, we know there are some challenges when it comes to particularly crossover with property management, considering that there's commercial property managers, there's residential property managers. It's a little easier with condo because condo management is its own unique thing, but we know that there are, as I say, some licensing requirements that, given our current structure with the industry councils, there are some of the brokers and associates out there who are having to comply with more than one industry council's requirements. So we're going to be looking at that to see if there's a way to streamline and make sure that we're eliminating as much as possible the duplication and crossover. So more to come on that as we work our way forward. So industry council activities over the last while, as I think Keith mentioned, it's been busy. We've had quite a number of things to deal with when we get to our meetings. The bylaws that the board is responsible for, we were again consulted quite formally and appropriately on those, including the election bylaws. Those were set as of, I think, last November. And education divestment has been a huge part of our agenda and dealing with the considerations of it, and particularly with condo, getting it up and running, as well as now, as I mentioned earlier, getting property management into the divestment process. And so thank you clearly to our RECA staff for all of the hard work that they've done in supporting our council and educating us and getting us through the process of divestment. And Don mentioned CMAC, the Condominium Management Investment or Condominium Management Advisory Committee, Implementation Advisory Committee. They were very instrumental in getting us through the planning process for condo divestment or condo setup, as well as setting the learning outcomes that are now being applied through the courses and the exams. One of our big responsibilities is disciplinary activity. We have specific responsibilities under the Act. And in certain cases, we have now had some lifetime withdrawals where we've had individuals who, for various reasons, have decided that this is the appropriate answer for them. And so we've had to go through the process that the registrar went through in terms of determining whether this was appropriate. And then we've been responsible for making the final decision and agreeing or accepting the lifetime withdrawal. And it's a serious matter. It would likely mean that they will not be allowed to be licensed anywhere else in Canada, because once one of the jurisdictions has decided that they are not eligible for working in that jurisdiction, that information is shared with the other jurisdictions. So we take it seriously, and just wanted to make sure that you all know that that is, again, one of our responsibilities. In terms of immediate priorities, well, we're doing one of them right now. Stakeholder engagement is critical to us because we can't operate in a vacuum. We need to understand what the issues are in both the business side of things as well as in the client side of things because of our consumer protection mandate. We've mentioned the strategic planning review, the rules review, and the licensing framework. I did mention relicensing education, and red tape reduction is it's something that obviously the government would be supportive of. And in our case, what that results in is that, and I mentioned the rules review, if we want to change some of the rules to make things a little more easy to deal with or more streamlined, those are all objectives that we as an industry council fully support and fully agree with. And we work with the other industry councils on matters that are that do have cross council or are of cross council interest. There is a group of us, the industry council chairs, that we get together from periodically for those discussions, and they've always been really good meetings because we do cover a lot of territory, and we all learn from each other in terms of the things that are of interest to the real estate industry as a whole, as well as making sure that we are, I guess, coordinated on things, that we aren't just each operating in our own little silos. So we will continue to do those activities, as well as I mentioned, the disciplinary or regulatory requirements are kind of ones that show up on our agenda pretty much every meeting. So that's what we've been up to. And with that, I think I'm going to ask Brian to open it up to the questions. And I see that we've had a few come in. So Brian, I will turn it over to you to, and then I will try to moderate. And if there's somebody that I think might be in the best position to answer the question besides myself, I will ask them to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first question has to do with the exams and the courses going on right now. There's a perception out there that there's a disconnect between what's in the courses and the exams. How is RECA going to improve the communication between between RECA and the course providers to ensure that there's no gaps between what's in the course and in the exams? How is RECA going about that?
So I guess there's maybe two parts to that question. One is that the course providers were originally given the learning outcomes that as I mentioned earlier, CMAQ was key to help develop for them to derive their course. So the courses were intended to be able to provide anybody who's going to write the exam with the basic information to be able to pass the exam. And then the exams were modeled after that same set of learning outcomes. So right now it is, as has been noted, an iterative process to make sure that there is no disconnect. And I maybe ask, I think Barbara's on the call, so maybe ask Barbara just to talk about how you're dealing with the course providers when there is feedback to that extent. And then more importantly, I think it's critical to know where do people find this disconnect? Like, what specifically are the issues that are coming up? Because those are, then it can be addressed, as opposed to it just being a general question of whether there's a perception or whether there's reality. So Barbara, are you able to comment on that?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have issued a competency exam blueprint, which is provided to all of the course providers, and it gives guidance to their courses and how to develop out the information. This is what we're basing our exams against as well. There does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect between the courses and the exams, and I can speak to the fact that what we're seeing is a couple of individuals not believing that they should be tested on certain pieces of the competencies. And so we're looking at trying to get that message out as well to course providers to provide that feedback to learners and reviewing the exams as well. And as you say, it is an iterative process and we're looking at it all.
Okay, so I guess I would say that to the extent that people are identifying issues, or as they take the exams, if there's an issue that they believe they have found, we're here to understand what that issue is. And to the extent that it is an exam issue, we'll deal with it as an exam issue. To the extent that it's a course provider issue, we'll provide the feedback to the course providers. But we do want to try to close this gap as quickly as we can, because as I mentioned earlier, there's a November 30th timeline that we're all trying to make sure we achieve getting everybody through by. So I think that, I don't know, Brian, if that answers the question, but that's, I think, the process. And I think getting the information into RECA and to people like, or to Barb or anybody on our industry council, I think that's the critical point here at this stage.
Absolutely. Just going through the questions here. One has to do, it might be a Barb question again, is if there will be a practice exam available for the practice of condominium management.
So Barb, is there one available? Or
Thank
will
you.
be?
Yes, there are practice exams for all 3 condominium courses that are out right now.
Where would they find those, Barb?
If they go to their MyRECA account, they'll be able to find them there. There's a link to the practice exams.
And supplemental question are the practice exams similar enough to the nature of the real exams that they'll get a flavor by taking the practice exam?
Absolutely. They are very similar in nature. Of course, they won't be the same questions, but
No, I understand.
very similar in nature.
Okay, thank you.
Don Brown, do you have a comment? You have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on the practice exam so that everybody understands. You won't be able to take your practice exam until such time as you're registered for that particular course. So you can't go through when you're doing the fundamentals of condominium management as an example, you're not going to see the practice of condo management practice exam available to you until you take that practice course. So, and maybe Barbara, if there's something different on there, you could comment, but that's my understanding.
You're exactly right, Don. That's true. So we start out with the fundamentals course. If you have to take that course, then you are allowed to take the practice course and then the pre-licensing exam. Until you finish all those 3 items, well, the practice courses, the practice exams, pardon me, are all optional. You don't have to take those, but you absolutely have to take the pre-licensing exam. So once you finish a pre-licensing exam for fundamentals, then you can enroll in the practice course. And then you're provided an optional practice exam for that course and the pre-licensing exam to write that. And then once that's done, if you are eligible to take the broker course, you can go through the whole process again with the broker course and the practice exams as being optional.
Great. Another question came in that sort of related to the practice exam question is if there's a course practicing, is there a course practice exam and exam for brokers? And yes, the answer is yes to all of those. There is a broker course. One course provider, I believe, offers the course at this point, and it does have its exam and practice exams. Next question. Given that learners are having difficulty passing the exams, is the industry council willing to consider extending the licensing date? So complete fundamentals by November 30th, perhaps, and maybe complete practice by June 30th, 2023.
Yeah, so clearly, as I've said a couple of times now, I think the goal still is that we want to see everybody get through it by November 30th, because I know from experience that if you extend a deadline, that just extends the deadline. And so I think the key message for today is no, at this stage, we're not posing that we're going to extend any deadlines. There are courses available, the exams are available. And so we would encourage everybody to take the time necessary and if you haven't been registered for one of your courses, now's the time. And if you are able to and willing to challenge an exam, again, now's the time. So we will, of course, monitor and we get regular reports at the Industry Council of what the sign-up rates are and what the conclusion rates are and completion rates are for exams. So we're monitoring that very closely. But as I say, right now, our goal is that we would hope everybody would still honor and aim for the November 30th, 2022 date.
Great. Another practice exam question. If someone wants to challenge the exams, can they take the practice exam?
Barb?
Perhaps Barb, you can answer that one.
Yeah.
Sure. They can take the practice exam. There is a nominal fee of $65 for the practice exams.
And how would people who want to challenge the exam access the practice exam?
Again, through their RECA account.
And we've had people do both, Barbara, at this point, or do you know?
Yes, we have. We've actually had one person challenge all 3 exams. I think you had mentioned this at the beginning of your presentation, and passed all of the exams.
Great. In the interest of reaching that November 30th deadline, one question has to do with why you have to complete the fundamentals course and pass the exam before moving on to the practice course. Could it be that you could start one while you haven't finished the other in the interest of time?
I haven't had that question before. But Barb, do you have a view?
Yes, we do have that in effect right now, that it's something we can look at in the future, but right now it would be very difficult for us to manage those going from one course to the next and trying to manage it in-house as well. So it's something we can discuss, but right now the way it's set up is you have to take one course and then the exam and then move into the next one.
Okay, I think that's a good question that maybe we can take up at our next industry council meeting, just to get a little bit more information on, and then we can get back to people. It's a good question.
You mentioned this earlier in your presentation, Mr. Chair, about the licensing framework, but perhaps some people missed that. Do you mind talking about how the industry council will talk about the licensing framework and what sort of things are under discussion? Because this person is asking if there are plans to separate the brokerage licensing for property management, or if it will continue to be licensed under a real estate brokerage.
Yeah, so that is the fundamental question. And I think, Russ, are you on? Because that may be something that came up, I think, at the Brokers Forum as well. And would you be able to provide a little bit more color on that?
Sure. So just to clarify here, they're wanting to know the success rates on the respective exams. Just walk me through the question again, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry. It had to do with the licensing framework. Will we separate out property management as its own brokerage, or will it continue to be under the real estate brokerage umbrella?
So this is going to be, we are looking at our complete licensing structure in the next 4 to 5 months. That may be different by different industry sectors, but we don't have the answers to whether we are specifically separating them out. However, we welcome the feedback from industry as to how you would like that approached, and then the respective industry councils will consider that.
Great. Perhaps it would be beneficial to give people an indication of how many people have actually registered for courses and taken exams compared to the total number that have to get through it by November 30th. Do you have those numbers, Barb?
Sorry, what are the numbers that you want?
Like how many people have actually registered for the courses and have started the courses and taken exams versus how many have to get through it, like the total number in the industry. What's our percentage?
Sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now.
So I think I understand the question. So why don't we take that as a takeaway, and we can put that answer up once we have the statistics, because we're reliant on the course providers, of course, to let us know how many people have signed up. So we'll have to probably canvass them to get the numbers.
Great. Next question. What is RECA and the Industry Council's plan to educate the public on the fact that their property manager has to be licensed? Because there's a lot of chatter out there about unlicensed individuals and companies managing a lot of properties in Alberta.
Okay, interesting. Don't know where the chatter is coming from, because we've certainly been clear about the fact that you have to be licensed in order to provide. This is condo managers, I take it.
No, property managers.
Property managers?
Yeah, unlicensed property management. There's people are saying there's a lot of people out there who aren't licensed. What's the Industry Council going to do to educate consumers and landlords who have a rental property that the manager that they hire has to be licensed?
Okay, well, I think it's the same as it has been for condo managers. We will just make sure that they understand what our role is in all of this. And if there's a broader role for government, or particularly Service Alberta, to do some similar education, we will be able to talk to them. I think we have them coming to our next Industry Council meeting, actually. So we can put that on the agenda if there's a concern and if there is chatter. I don't know how we would actually get a handle on where these people are that are being chattered about, but if there is evidence out there, I think we would be interested in hearing about it. And Doug, do you have a view on this?
This is an ongoing issue where we see people doing unlicensed practice in property management, and RECA has really no direct way of knowing about it unless somebody reports it to us. So it's really important that people in the property management industry, if they see that happening, to send, they can do it directly or anonymously. They can either go direct to our conduct review process and there, or they can report it to one of the regulatory compliance advisors, and we'll follow up with it. But we take it quite seriously, and as soon as we're aware of an instance where that's happening, we make contact with the person or the company that's doing it, and establish whether or not they are doing unlicensed practice, and then they'd be instructed, if they are doing unlicensed practice, to either cease doing it immediately and get licensed, or just get out of it completely. So we deal with numerous cases of this every year.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And that's kind of my comment about chatter is one thing, but facts are better. So if we can find out about them, we will. And as I say, we do have the consumer protection mandate, but we do also have the support of Service Alberta in terms of making sure that there is more broad knowledge about what the requirements are and what the Act requires in terms of licensing. So. Brian?
Great. Back to the course and exams for the next question. How does RECA regulate the course material and exam content to ensure consistency? Like what's the Industry Council or RECA's role in the content that actually goes into the courses?
So again, I'll start, but I'll ask Barb to confirm, deny. We did provide them all with as I said, the learning outcomes that were expected that the courses would cover, and be able to prepare somebody who took the course to be able to take the exam. And then, as Barbara said, the exams were modeled after that same content. So I think Barbie mentioned already that we do try to make sure that there is coordination now that we are getting actual real world results from the exam testing, that feedback is being provided to course providers to say, well, here's where people are not being able to pass the exam, and then try to determine whether that's a course issue or an exam issue. So any other thoughts or comments to the question?
So one thing I would add, Don, is RECA simply attests to the fact that the course providers actually have to attest to the fact that their course matches the competency exam blueprint. And there's there's a checklist of a bunch of items that the course provider has to attest to. And when I receive the application for the course, I go through and make sure that they've provided all that information, and then the course will get recognized. So it is really up to the course provider to ensure that their course matches that exam blueprint, and it's up to RECA to make sure that our exams match that exam blueprint as well.
Yeah, so just to be really clear on this point, the requirement that RECA was given to divest of education was clear. It was that's what we were supposed to do, and it was left then to course providers in the marketplace to develop the courses and take over that responsibility from RECA. And so we really don't have any, I would say, direct authority over the course providers. That's now a marketplace activity. But we do have a collaborative, would say collaborative process to make sure that we are still aimed at the same objectives, which is to getting people through the course, because obviously we're keenly interested in making sure that business is able to continue and that people are able to get through the courses in an appropriate and professional way. So it will continue to be a partnership arrangement as opposed to we don't have governance responsibility over what the course providers do. It's more just letting them know that their courses either are or are not matching up to the exam blueprints.
A couple more exam questions. Just does RECA review the comments that are made in exams? There's apparently a comment feature in exams, and have the unusual questions in the practice exams been changed? Things that they say there was questions that had to do with non-Alberta legislation. Have those practice exams been changed and reviewed? Perhaps Barbara, you can answer that.
Sure. Absolutely. There's a feature within the exams whereby you can, there's a little notation. If you read the prep guide for examination, it discusses how to use that feature. There is a commenting feature, and we absolutely read all the comments. We are reviewing the exams practically on a daily basis to make sure where the idiosyncrasies are happening. And we're looking at that. And as Don said, it's an iterative process that we're fixing things as we go, as we get feedback. If we feel that something isn't testing properly, this is typical with exams, that especially at the beginning, to make sure that things are correctly working. And we've been doing that.
Great. Back to unlicensed practice. This person claims there are a number of companies that are providing condo manager services without being licensed, simply by claiming that they are consultants to the condominium corporation. Is that something on the industry council's radar?
I think we've heard this one before, but Doug, do you want to comment on that, please?
Generally, consulting is just a guise for somebody doing unlicensed practice. And that's been our experience with real estate and with property management over the years. And I expect that'll be our same experience in condominium management. So if people are saying they're a consultant, but they're advising condominium management boards on their operations and directly involved with the board of directors, in all likelihood, they're carrying out condominium management services and require a license. So as the comment I made about property managers acting unlicensed earlier, the same thing applies in condominium management. So if people come across someone who is promoting that they're a consultant, they should let us know, and we will follow up on it to ensure that in fact what they're doing is consulting and not providing condominium management services.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And I mentioned earlier, one of our responsibilities as industry council is disciplinary activities. So if it comes to pass that somebody is reported in and through Doug's or RECA's processes, it's determined that they are not in accordance and they are not licensed appropriately, and they don't get themselves to the right stage and get licensed as appropriately, then they will come back to us to deal with them under the Act.
Great. Next question has to do with the E&O insurance. They say it's been challenging to find E&O insurance for condominium management brokerages. It's a new risk category for insurers. What can RECA do to help out? Do you have known insurers that you can point to these people?
I don't know, Russ or Doug, is this something that you're able to comment on at this stage?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not aware of any specific providers in the condo area. However, Doug, do you know of any specific providers?
Well, I do know that there's been some people that had struggled, but they, we recommended they, go back and consult with more insurance brokers and see what's available out there. And in any of the cases that people have come to me saying they've had difficulties after discussions and they've gone on their own exploratory for it, they've not come back to me and said it's been not that they have had problems getting it. I just assume that they've been able to, and that this started probably back in January, the first couple of calls I had. So there's been 5 months and I haven't heard a lot in the last couple of months on this issue. So there must be providers out there. One way that condo managers could find out would be simply to touch base with other condo manager brokers that they are friends with or work with on a regular basis and find out what their experience has been. And that might give them a lead to brokers that would help them out.
Don, I see you have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we didn't have any problem at all getting it. I'm not sure who our actual insurer is, but what I will do for everybody is I'll check with our broker, and if he's comfortable in us publishing his name, I'll get it over to the RECA staff, and perhaps they can put it on the site or do a blast out to all the management companies to put that broker forward, because I know we didn't have any problem, and the rates were actually quite reasonable. I did work with one big broker to see if they could put together something similar to the RECs, but there just wasn't enough volume and enough interest. So, but we found it, and I'm happy to check with our broker, and if he's willing to put his name out there, I'll get it over to the RECA staff, and then maybe they can do a blast out.
All right, thank you, Don. Thanks, Doug and Russ.
Next question has to do with, I guess, the requirements for a license. This person's been managing for 40 years, taken lots of courses, had designations. Why can't they be grandfathered in? And why do they have to take the new courses?
Well, first of all, because it's required under the Act, and there isn't really any option under the Act for grandfathering. So unfortunately, that's the situation. Now, I think as has been mentioned a few times, there is the opportunity to challenge the exams as opposed to having to take the exams, or take the courses and then take an exam. So if you've been in business for 40 years, I would presume that you would have most of the knowledge that would be required, but maybe I'd open it up to any of the other members of the council to provide further comment. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo what you said about challenging the exam. And I'm sure that anybody that's been in the industry for a long while could easily challenge the exam and pass. But I think one of the big things that everybody needs to keep in mind is that we're moving the condominium management specifically, or as one of the areas, into a more professional image and a more professional industry. And as such, there has to be a standard. And so, although somebody that's working in the business for 40 years probably knows far more than I do and is far more proficient than I am, once you challenge the exam, then we know that everybody is working on the exact same standard. it's just something that has to be on the professional to keep it that way. And I'm a strong proponent of it. I've always have been. And I think if everybody goes in and challenges the exam, then we know we're all based on the same standard. So hope that helps.
Thanks, Don.
Great. Back to exams, and given the disconnect between the exams and the course content, and practice exams with questions that perhaps shouldn't have been in there that we've since fixed, will the Industry Council consider waiving practice exam fees for people who took it when there were these bad questions in it? And is there discussions about if a learner fails the exam 2 times, will they be exempted from having to take the course over again to re-challenge the exam, given the disconnect between the exams and the course content?
So that's not a question that we've debated as a council. I guess I would take issue a little bit with this disconnect issue, because I don't think it is as big as it may be being made out to be. I can't imagine that, I know, pick a number here, that 90% of the questions are still totally appropriate, and at worst maybe 5 to 10% of them in the beginning were not in line with the courses. So to the extent that those have all been dealt with now, and particularly if it's in a practice exam, that to me doesn't really warrant any change in our practice. So I think it would be a matter of knowing how many, and as I say, we get these statistics regularly, how many people are having this difficulty. And as Barbara's already said, adjustments are being made regularly, and I would put them in the category of tweaks as opposed to major rewrites. And so from my perspective, as I say, we haven't talked about it as an industry council. I guess we can certainly consider it if there's enough evidence to say that we should, but right now I think the answer is not at this time. I see Russ, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to also suggest that we are currently working on plans to remediate any challenges that might exist between exams and courses. We're bringing to the Industry Council, which Mr. Chair, of course, is not scheduled until June 6th. Just a bit of a plan to alleviate some of the stress and anxiety in industry, which will involve looking at potentially allowing for additional rewrites than what's currently part of the process. Talking about a whole host of things just to be able to enable the industry to get in and get their licenses. We recognize how what this must be like as a new licensed industry to come in and to have to go through all the education and the examinations, getting licensed so that you can continue on with your livelihood. And we are more than aware of that and appreciate the demands that you have there. And so as such, that's one of the things that we are going to bring to the Industry Council for discussion in June 6th.
So there you go. I said not at this time, but now it's June 6th, so we're good.
Great. Next question. Have any RECA staff or the Industry Council members or board members taken the courses and exams?
Well, I think I can say that some of the Industry Council members have already taken and passed the exams, so I'll let them speak for themselves. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just challenged the practice of condominium management exam and did pass. And I'm still debating on whether or not I will be challenging the broker one or taking the course. Yeah, it was a tough exam, but I passed. And I believe Dawn and Keith can speak to where they're at with the courses and exams as well.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we've had 3 of our associates write the exam after taking, they did the Haskins course. And 3 of them have written and successfully passed the first time. I've done the fundamentals, but unfortunately I was out of town all winter and so I wasn't able to write the exam. I'm scheduled for June 1st, so I'll be able to give a little better input after that. But so far 3 of our associates have written and passed first time. So with some substantial good marks as well. So
Okay, thanks, Don. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I've enrolled in the ACMEC course. And just to let everyone know, it's not 40 hours. It's basically an hour a day for 7 or 8 days. So it's not overwhelming. And I've done the practice exam and I'm booked for the exam on June 7th. So I can comment on the exam to the course after that fact.
Okay, thank you, Keith. So yes, the industry council have taken and are taking the courses and the exams.
Someone has asked if this session is recorded for review later. Yes, it is being recorded and it will be up on RECA's website, possibly even later this afternoon.
That's probably the easiest question we've had.
Yeah. Let's see here. Well, I guess we can talk about relicensing courses. You had mentioned that that's something the industry council is discussing. This person suggests a helpful topic for a relicensing course would be contract law. But perhaps you can talk about if the industry council has talked about what should be in the relicensing course.
Yeah, thank you. And as I mentioned, that's something that's on our agenda. So we haven't really gotten into it in depth yet. We will. And so thank you for the comment. And obviously, if there are other thoughts that people on the call have that we should be keeping in mind as we get into that topic, by all means, feed them in because we'd be delighted to consider them.
And we're down to our final minute here. So if you want to say some final words, I guess now's the time.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you to everybody for attending and for being as participative as you have been. And we do appreciate the questions, and we do appreciate that there are some tough timelines out there, and we are sensitive to them. As Russ has said, we want to make sure that we are sensitive to the business needs as well as to the requirement that we have as RECA and as the industry council to meet our requirements as with public protection mandates. So it's a balancing act. We will do our best to meet your expectations as well as the requirements of the act and the regulations. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your input. Thank you to all the industry council members as well as to the RECA staff who have participated in today's call. And I hope everybody has a great day. Take care all.